If one day you log in there and you see Winston eating a donut on a loop, it was me. Now I'm going to bring you straight tips and tricks. Some of them you might find very basic, and then for others, you never know, you might learn something. Now before any little faggots just think about, coming in with that fuckery, complaining and bitching and moaning just because you can't figure it out.
Ooh, we can't figure it out because of the way you're teaching us.
Well, my answer is, has, and will always be, I don't care.
He said fuckery. Ha ha ha.
And I remember my little tip here is whenever you're trying to line up a pivot ball inside of its little groove or whatever you want to call it, get something thin like this and just kind of make sure it's in there. Helps you guide it. Carefully pull it out, you're done. You could always use something thin anyways, right? If you think about it, like little dental tools or something like that. There's a million uses for them. I just gave you one. My tip being here that weight savings can be found inside of the nylon nuts. Definitely look into that, because at a certain point with your vehicles, you only get so many different things without jeopardizing its durability. If from the moment you fire your engine up, your vehicle sounds like the Gong Show, did you know that there is a household item that you may have already that you can use to help mitigate much of that clinkety clank? Now, I'll preface this by saying it's important you figure out what that noise is before just masking it. However, in your house or at your local hardware store, this right here, I don't know what the hell you call it, pipe thread seal, plumber's tape, whatever, you'd be surprised at all the things you can do with this. Here's an example now. Each of these parts is new, the dog bone and the outdrive. You can hear that, right? Now, you get some of this tape, you put it around the edge. Look at that, huh? It's still fluid, it sticks in there, pivots, everything. Now I know a lot of people like to use O-rings or whatever to position it, and that still works, but they can fall out and whatnot. So this is one use right here. We're into dog bones, or let's say that you're finding a lot of slop and anything that pivots, right? That goes inside like a pivot ball, huh? Now what's up? Or as an example, for those of you that have the diff cups that use a grub screw to allow you to put the cross pin in, often, and this actually happened to me the other day, this hole can wear out, and at that point you're screwed. You just either have to replace it, or you know what it is by now. Tried it the other day, worked like a champ. My center diff was leaking something fierce prior. After I put it in, put a little pipe thread on it, it's dry as ice.
Yo, this dude got posters in this room.
He got posters in his room, dog.
He a man on the road.
A man crush on my man got a man crush on McGregor, man. He's a soul.
Guys, if your dust cap set did not come with anything to cover up your fuel nozzle, you can use an antenna cap.
Alright. The greatest tip you'll ever get for starting your engine with a pull start. Have you ever pulled on your pull start until your arm hurts, or you have blisters on your fingers? You're wasting your time. When everything is set up correctly on a pull start, it should fire up almost immediately. Now I just primed this, and I'm going to expect this engine to start in 1 or 2 pulls, definitely no more than 3. This right here is your tip. It doesn't even need to be a heat gun. now with the heat applied, I guarantee you it's going to fire right up. It's going to... Or even that would move. So when I first got it, I started losing some connections periodically, and I figured out, oh, it's because my thing's moving. So you can buy things that will take care of this and pat it real nicely and everything, but I like to get a piece of cloth. Just cut a piece out, and then you roll it up. You place it in the tray and you test it. And I can tell you now, that's way too little. So I'm just going to cut a whole new piece, and this one fits much better. There's no... When you break your engines in really rich, you're going to get a lot of smoke. What will happen is Threadlock will come. If you're breaking in your engine now or in the future, keep an eye on those lock screws, because all that smoke and stuff, it's going to cause your Threadlock screws to come loose. And that's the last thing you want to have happen when you're breaking in an engine.
Yeah, nigga, I got something for your ass. Got some advice. Better lay off that narcotic, nigga. That shit done made you null and void.
Quote-unquote throttle mod is not needed. And it's just one of the key factors preventing many people that I see from a really tight tune is their clutch. Much of that is dependent on the vehicle, just because some vehicles, in my opinion, are more apt to having clutch problems. But I would say another very key factor in this, and I think I understand why as well now, but is the high idles. It's a lean, high-speed, fat, low end. And what happens is, I believe, that people, when they don't have their engine tuned, your idle bounces everywhere, okay? And the fact that it's bouncing everywhere, I think some people end up trying to mask that by raising their idle some, and to where it's just like completely loud. It's at that, you know, that unhealthy high RPM consistently, if that makes sense. Just my observation.
When putting on a pipe, get yourself a little bit of afterrun oil or any kind of oil. Put it around the gasket right here. I promise you, it really does help keep the seal. And that's what's up.
One question that I often get, this is outside of RC, is how the hell do you control your scene so well? And this is because I have so many damn, things going on, disparate domains of my life, and the best way that I can answer this, and it's kind of geeky, but I have I'm a data guy, so I build all these cubes that tell me at any moment in time what I need to be doing. So everything is all about intent and being in context for me. So as an example, I'll press a button that says, okay, based on where you're at, who you're with, how much time you have and how much energy you have, etc., and prioritization, here's what you need to be doing. Okay. So with that, let me give you what I call a high value task. And this is something with low energy. It's something you do very quickly, but it's gonna definitely add some value. It's a very quick maintenance
for ways to
item
really run
that
correct. To hell with aluminum fuel tanks and all that kind of BS. Take a look at your throttle servo and see if it's aligned correctly. Often they can become a little bit loose. So I just noticed this today when I was giving a quick checkup. No big deal. All we have to do is adjust a few screws. And now you're rolling correct, at least from this perspective. So it's a little thing, but a big thing. You can laugh, but how's your vehicle running right now? Once again, don't overlook these small things because, as I've said multiple times, guys, it's a clustered effect.
Many small favorable things will build itself into a lean, mean, rip-roaring, check-a-bitch machine.
I'm going to go back to what I always do, and that is intent, okay? So here's what I mean by that. My intent here is to ensure I can get this onto the Savage and mesh it with the spur gear. So consequently, there are many, many things that can affect that. Let me go and just do my thing real quick, get it working, and then I'm going to show you what I did. So take a look at what I'm doing here. This is pretty interesting in that I'm taking the engine and I'm moving it in different directions. And I found this to be a really good test, because if you face it toward the air, what's going to happen is you'll see that the RPMs will slow down if it's not shimmed correctly. You know, so it's a good test. I'll tell you a secret, only once did I fully negate slop with, I guess what we call a single change. Very rare will making one change fix slop. However, it did happen to me once, and it was on the Savage. And believe it or not, it was changing out. So just a little tip, if you guys want to get rid of that slop, man, get the heavy duty one. That slop will go away for shallow.
But just be very careful about making your selection first. HPI is notorious for having some jacked up part numbers, and second, the Savage community is just as jacked up with their wives' tale. Get at me if you got questions. Fuckers already know.
All right, so first some more tips about pivot balls. What I can tell you is what I've experienced, which is quite a lot, I believe. And first and foremost, I believe that it's the rod end that typically wears and not the pivot balls. I know that there are people that recommend getting new fangled type pivot balls, as an example, hard anodized pivot balls. Okay. Here's what I've learned. So let's first begin with hard anodized versus the normal aluminum. The hard anodized ones don't do anything more to stop slop as new as an aluminum one would as new. Okay. Now, first and foremost, I always recommend buying them in sets. That that's just me, but there's nothing more special about these other than the fact that they do take a little bit longer to wear. Now, in all candor, I have not done any sort of research or explicit studies on determining which one wears first, like where is the point of failure, the actual tie rod or the pivot ball. But it would just, plastic versus some kind of a metal, I would think the metal would win out. Again, I don't know, but I do know that anodized pivot balls, it's not going to stop slop if you have slop already, other than the fact it's new. Make sense? Second thing, when looking for pivot balls, often they have certain types that are threaded on the inside versus ones that are not. Definitely recommend the ones that are threaded. There's the upside and the downside. The downside is that if you are using a pivot ball from another vehicle or whatnot, then maybe you're looking at the metric versus standard type hardware, things such as that. But the upside is a little tighter fit, less slop. You already saw where I mentioned earlier about the plumber's tape. And then the final thing regarding pivot balls, and this is something that the short course community brought to light a few years ago, specific to the SCTE. And that is, often when you're running full droop, what'll happen is you'll get some binding. Okay, so imagine if these A-arms were down a little bit more at an angle, okay, and this is consequently right here, This knuckle's going to be slanted more, etc., etc. And so if you go too far down, often you can have a vehicle which allows for down travel far enough to where you get a little bit of binding in your steering links. Simple fix to that is get yourself a coned washer. There you go. Get something like this right here. I've done another video on this already, but and then you basically put that on top of the pivot ball, etc., and you're essentially extending the pivot ball. Is what you're doing.